Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Welcome to part 2 of Big Blend Radio's special Spring Garden Party 2025. Today's show is all about gardens, flowers, poetry, and art. Part 1 aired yesterday, and you can check that out in the link in the episode notes, or just go to bigblendradio.com. And that show featured a number of travel writers, all who are part of the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association, and our special guest co-host, Johnny Schaefer. Johnny is an award-winning singer-songwriter based out of Pasadena, California, and he co-hosts the Big Daily Blend show with us every first Sunday. He also closes out today's show with one of his high school friends, Kimmy Inyages. She is a floral designer who's based in Idaho, and on this show she talks about what that is like, some of the designs she has done, what it's like to be a florist or a floral designer, and the differences between the two. And she also shares some heartwarming stories about the actual power of flowers. We also go to Stratford, Ontario, where we chat with travel writer, author, and poet Heidi Sander. She talks about how Stratford is a destination for North American theater and garden lovers, and her Stratford Gems is a book series. It's a poetic travel book, and it highlights some of the special gardens in Stratford through a unique artistic blend of photography and poetry. And you get to hear some of that poetry on today's show. We also go out to the desert Southwest. Travel writer Debbie Stone takes us to Origami in the Garden. This is where you can see beautiful sculptures by artist Kevin Box. Eva Eldridge, who's also a travel writer, joins us from Tucson, Arizona, where she talks about the area's gardens, gardening in the desert, and then also talks about some of her favorite desert plants. So everybody sit back, enjoy the show. We're kicking it off with Eva, then we're going to Debbie, then we're going to Heidi, and then we're going to Johnny and Kimmy. All right, we are carrying on with our garden party, and we're going to go to Tucson, Arizona. There's no way we're having a garden party without getting Eva Eldridge on the show. You've heard her on the show over the years. If you're new to the show, Eva is a travel writer. She's an editor. She works in the world of books, publishing, marketing, all of that good stuff. And you can go to evaeldridge.com. She's based out of beautiful Tucson, Arizona, is also co-head of the Tucson Sisters in Crime group. And they're all writers who, write murder mysteries and all kinds of things. And sometimes you may read a story that somebody's buried in a desert garden. Isn't that true, Eva? How are you? I just thought I'd bring some murder into a garden. What do you think?
Yeah, that works.
Yeah,
and you can use some of the local plants to kill people.
Oh yeah, you totally could. You could throw somebody into a saguaro, but then that's mean to the saguaro. We wouldn't want to do that. But you've
Maybe
definitely
they like the blood.
Yeah, people eating saguaro cactus. Well, this is off to a good start, truly. What's great also, when you think about gardens is all the movies like The Day of the Triffids. Have you watched that? The Day of the Triffids?
No.
Okay. Anyway, I get warped whenever I think about the Tucson Sisters in Crime because it is murder and mystery and all that great.
Mayhem. Murder and mayhem. Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. All right. So now gardening. I think that Tucson is a garden city. What would you say about that? I know it's the UNESCO gastronomy capital, but what about for gardens?
I think we have it's a different kind of gardening from anywhere else because our seasons, our seasons are short. So we have these very short seasons. So you can have a winter garden, you can have a spring garden, you can have sort of a summer garden. August, you pretty much hang it up because nothing survives August. And then you start all over again with a fall garden. So it's a real, it's a juggling that what plants you plant when and when you can produce, but we can produce food and flowers 12 months out of the year. And I've been doing that. And I am totally surprised when something actually works. I have celery right now Doesn't look like
Oh,
your
wow.
celery in the grocery store, but I have celery plants growing.
Wow. And you know that April is fresh celery month, right?
Oh,
Just thought
I
I'd,
did not know that.
and the best way to eat celery is with peanut butter. I'm sorry, it just is. But celery is so good for you. They say if we have two stalks of celery a day, that helps even out our blood sugars and all kinds of stuff. It's like a superfood, celery, especially if you drink it and get all the juice. Have you ever juiced it?
No, I'm not really. I eat it. I like celery, so I just put it in everything.
I'm like you. Yeah. I think if I'd make it like a celery martini, you know, or even a
No,
margarita. No? Yeah, that's a
no,
little weird.
yeah,
Okay. All right.
no.
Well, but
I
you
put it
grow
in my.
holly.
I
Go
I
ahead.
put it in my V8 juice when I make V8 juice because I make usually V7 juice, but it has celery in it.
Mm, good for Bloody Marys. I mean, just
Yeah,
going on the garden party theme here. A Bloody Mary on a spring day is quite wonderful out on a garden. And especially if you're
yes,
doing it from your own garden. So wow. So you make your own V8 juice or
right.
V7, however you want to do it, from your own tomatoes and everything.
No, the tomatoes I have to get elsewhere, like in Wilcox, or I bring them back from Colorado because tomatoes don't do, I can't grow that kind of a volume. But, I do, it's whatever I can get on hand, whatever is on hand at the time. And I usually do it from the tomatoes I get either in Wilcox or Pueblo or something. Anyway, yeah, and then I mix whatever vegetables I have on hand or I can get on, and it's usually all organic. So
It's almost like gazpacho.
yes, and it's thick and it's not as smooth as the commercial stuff, of course, but it makes a hell of a Bloody Mary, I gotta tell you.
Mm, this is sounding really good. We haven't talked about this yet. I like it. Of course we do. So let's talk about some of the gardens in Tucson. I would say Saguaro National Park would be a good garden to go to. So you can learn about saguaro cactus, hike among them. The visitor centers areas always have like little nature trails you can go on that label the plants so you can see them. And so a lot of the parks in Tucson, you guys have an incredible park system. All
Yes.
of them have, wildflowers, like Catalina State Park has like a wildflower hike, beautiful this time of year. It's just a beautiful
Not
time. Mm.
not so much. We didn't get wildflowers this year at all because we haven't had rain at all.
Oh,
So
well,
the
that's sad.
wildflowers are extremely limited, and the ocotillo are blooming already, but they're like naked sticks with flowers at the top of them
Oh, oh,
because we haven't had the rain this year. But we've had in the past couple of years we've had really beautiful springs. Um,
mm,
so it's the desert and you can't always expect that kind of water.
mm.
So we
And
have the Tucson Botanical Garden, which is totally incredibly impressive, and it's not that big, but it has an amazing array of plants. And the Desert Museum also has the Sonora Desert Museum has an amazing garden area with all the different varieties of cactus and other desert plants in it. So, and I'm working on, I don't grow that many desert plants in my garden. It's mostly vegetables and flowers.
mm, vegetables and flowers. And you got trees too, and vines, and you've got cactus too. But the Tucson Botanical Garden is beautiful to explore. And then Tohono Chul Park, that's
Oh, I
one of
forgot
my
about Tohono
favorites.
Chul. Oh
I
yeah,
love
that's
Tohono
incredible.
Chul Park. That is definitely something I want to do. Yeah, and go back to because it's been a long time. So
It'll be nice and toasty when you're here next.
yeah, I know, but maybe when we get, maybe you'll have a good monsoon season when we get to Tucson this year for summer. I'm kind of
That would be
hoping.
nice, wouldn't it?
I think it would be excellent. If you ask me, I'm all for that. The other thing too, you've got Tohono Chul Park is, can you tell everyone about the night blooming Cereus that happens in Tucson? Because this is like everyone in Tucson knows about this, right? The event that
Right.
happens that you never know when.
It's called the Queen of the Night. It's a cirrus cactus that the native one. It's not. There's a zillion kinds of cirrus cactus and night blooming cactuses. A lot of them are imported from Africa and other places, but there's a native one, and when it blooms, and we don't know when, but especially Tohono Chul, they send out alerts and they say tonight's the night, and they open up the park and people go and see the night blooming cirrus open, and they have these. They're kind of sticky like cactuses, not quite pencil cactus, but really not. They're not robust, big, huge chunks like a saguaro or some of the other ones. But they have these sticky cactus, and they grow up in trees. They use the trees for support, and then they all bloom the same night all over the
Wow.
city. All over the city, they all bloom at the same time.
Wow. That's
And
amazing.
they are and they are beautiful. The blooms are huge, right? They're bigger than palm size sometimes. So
Mm.
so it's a phenomenon, and it's fun to watch. I haven't gone to of course Tohono Chul is mobbed that night, so getting in and stuff is crazy. But I absolutely love the night blooming cirrus, whether it's the native ones or the other ones that are imported. I think they have these incredible flowers. All the
Mm.
cactus that bloom like that have these incredibly beautiful flowers. And so you don't expect that from pokey,
Yeah.
cactus.
Well, isn't it getting to the time where the saguaros start bloom? That's more in May, right? When the saguaro cactus bloom.
Who knows this year? Who knows this year?
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's just a smaller bloom, and it's not
And
as
sometimes they
prolific.
bloom for a month at a time. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen the saguaros bloom yet.
Mm.
This ocotillos used to bloom right now in April. That's an April flower, right?
Yeah.
And then the prickly pear bloom and the staghorn cactus bloom, and then the saguaros bloom. So, um,
Mm.
like I
And I love
said,
the
we haven't.
barrels. The barrels
eh,
come in like
Well,
now, even.
they come in at a different time, I think.
Mm.
And the pin cushions bloom. I have a little pin cushion that has really pretty pink flowers, little tiny ones.
Oh,
God.
okay. I'm feeling a
Anyway,
little homesick.
and the torch cactus. Now, so the torch cactus are not native to here, but man, are they beautiful. My neighbor across the street has a couple of patches of them, and they're just incredibly beautiful.
I love that.
So,
And then the aloes, when the aloes bloom, and boy, do the hummingbirds love it. That's the one thing about Tucson is the amount of hummingbirds that we have in this
yes,
beautiful region is in southeast Arizona, down Ramsey Canyon, down in Bisbee area, just Madeira Canyon, just outside
Sierra
Tucson.
Vista.
Oh yeah, that area is just
That's where Ramsey Canyon, Carr Canyon, the hummingbirds are really great up there, down there,
yeah. But even
higher
Tucson,
altitude.
yeah, Tucson, you get the broad-tailed, you get the broad billed,
Look at the Annas, a lot of
yep, Anna's,
Annas.
and blue
So,
chin. Is it blue chin? No, black chin. Black chin and Rufus once in a while when they come in. I remember them being in the
and
fall, if I'm
they
remembering
just come
right.
through. They're here brief. They're very brief. They are like in New Mexico. They're up
Feisty
there by herds or flocks.
herds of hummingbirds. I like
Yeah.
that. That's a good title for a band. Herds of
So,
hummingbirds, or even an album. I like that.
so our gar-
The hummingbirds, the Rufus ones are like feisty. They are
yes,
like,
well
this is my feeder. Oh,
they all kind of are, but yeah, they're very protective of the feeders. And we're down to just one feeder right now, but I also have flowers that they're eating off of. And eventually I chopped down my big Tacoma, which is an Arizona trumpet bush. I chop it down almost every year because it comes back, gangbusters, and then it just blooms, and it blooms for months at a time. And that's a big hummingbird attraction. And there's a bunch of other flowers I grow that are big, plants I grow that are
mm,
big hummingbird attractors. And I have a big, huge basil plant that's blooming that's attracting bees. And then
wow.
the I had the the tangerine crossvine bloomed like crazy this year, and it attracted a million bees. So, we try to plant things that are friendly to the area. So to promote bees, and of course, right now I could probably not be so happy about the quail, but
Aw, we
because
like the quail.
they are eating my baby plants,
You have
completely
to,
wiped out some plants. So I'm
oh,
having to replant and cover it with wire to keep them out of it.
oh dear. The perils of
Well,
gardening, you know,
yeah,
you just have to plant more. It's so good and it's so healthy to garden, and to get outside and watch things grow or get eaten, but it's part of nature. I don't know, it's gardening is so good for us. It's good for
it's
the soul. It's gardening month, so it's a good time to get out. And do you know there's a naked gardening day?
no,
And there is.
no, no, we're not doing that.
No, it's not
No way,
funny.
we're not doing that.
Just saying. I thought I'd put it out there. Well, Eva, thank you so much. As always, it's fun to have you on the show. We can't wait for more. And we definitely couldn't do a garden party without Eva being on there. She's got a wonderful garden and yeah, wonderful garden. I love what you've done and all the vegetables, even when we were there, like in the late fall or early winter, man, she had chard coming up and all kinds of things. So
That
it's really
chart is
cool.
still growing. That chart is still
Really.
growing. Yes, same
Wow. And
plants.
how's your citrus? I've got to get the garden report, but how's the citrus plants doing?
The kumquat is full of kumquats. The lime and the lemon and the orange just bloom, so I don't know if they've set
Ooh,
yet.
I love that. Ooh, very
They're
cool.
tiny
Very
tree.
cool.
They're tiny trees. So, I got one lemon last year or this year from the lemon tree, which thrilled me. So hopefully, I might get one or two because they're tiny trees.
Mm,
So
yeah, yeah. Well,
we'll
very
see.
cool. Very cool. Everyone, evaeldridge.com is a website to go to. And if you're in the Tucson area or you love books out of the desert, Southwest, or write or anything to do with books and Tucson, check out
Send me an
Tucson
email.
Sisters in Crime. Yeah, or send an email to Eva or go to TucsonSistersInCrime.org. Thanks, Eva.
Thank you.
So everyone, if it's a garden party, Debbie Stone is going to be part of it. She travels the world, she travels the country, and I know Debbie loves gardens. And she's based in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which has some beautiful gardens, a lovely botanical garden. It's just a beautiful area. But she's also traveled to gardens around the world, like in Singapore. Oh my gosh, those gardens in Singapore. Debbie, that's still one of the most iconic gardens, right?
I think it's pretty. I mean, it's so unique and pretty spectacular. I think most people would agree. If they go there, they're just they're pretty overwhelmed with how incredible it is there.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about all the gardens we've talked about over the years. Chicago, you've done a lot of sculpture gardens, and then also Santa Fe is a big deal. So right now you've got a new story, and everyone, the link is in the episode notes. And she's taking us to Santa Fe, which, normally she's taking us somewhere else in the world, like Kirsten Bosch in South Africa. Wasn't that one an epic garden
Oh,
too? Oh,
beautiful, beautiful.
that
They're all
really
over
is
in
one of my favorite.
Bainbridge Island, Minneapolis. I
Oh,
mean,
that's right.
they're all over the place, and in Chicago, they're just all over the place. And they're just, to me, it's such a wonderful thing to be able to have a garden to get some respite or some inspiration and maybe some serenity and peace, or else just an incredible splashes of color when you need it.
Fresh air, sunshine, flower power is good, but art is part of it. And you do a lot on that when you go to gardens. I know that you in on,
Yes.
oh, wait, there's an art aspect. I'm going in and Everyone, just some background here. You know, if you're the first time listening, Debbie is on Big Blend Radio every fourth Tuesday with a destination that she's talking about, sometimes multiple destinations. Again, she travels the world. So stay tuned for that. Actually, in April, we are talking about Minneapolis. That's our conversation, and that does involve sculptures and gardens and downtown walking tours. It's an awesome segment, so stay tuned for that. But this is really cool. Like, you know, we think about gardens and yes, sculptures and everything, but what you're bringing to the table, I think, is over the top amazing. Origami in the garden, origami sculptures in the garden. So this is origami. You know, you think about that as like it's paper, right? Isn't this origami is Japanese, right? Because you used to live there.
Correct.
Right?
And it's an ancient Asian art, and it means, it translates to mean paper folding, which is what it is. And a lot of times people, you know, when you're younger, you might have done some origami, or, you know, like the crane is well known, in Japan. And that's one of the iconic, you know, origami items, I think, that people, you know, can relate to, or they think of when they think of origami. But it really is, it's paper folding. And this artist, Kevin Box, has taken this to a different level, in my opinion. He has created these sculptures. They're basically out of bronze. They're stainless steel cast forms. He sees paper as the clean slate that he starts with, and then the piece that he creates goes through like a 35-step, 12-week process of lost wax casting, and he collaborates with origami masters because he believes that collaborating it helps magnify his ideas, and he definitely enjoys the whole collaborative aspects of working with people, especially masters in this particular form of art. And the kinds of things that inform him are, he creates origami animals and flowers and all sorts of objects, animals, and he is an incredibly creative man that also is somebody who believes that gardens are the way to get art to people, because people aren't intimidated by gardens, whereas they might be if they think about going into a gallery or a museum. But a garden, he says, is very approachable.
And kids can go in the garden.
That's
the other thing for families. I think it this is the thing about what's happened in the world of galleries, is that it's, and there is something to be learned about, like going into a library, like you've gone to a lot of historic libraries too. It's like, shh, don't touch this, but you can touch that, but not this, not that. So it's kind of it's kind of like wineries were kind of like that back in the day, and now they've had to learn to be a little bit loose, in regards to just don't put people down for what they don't know. Let's just put it that way. Does that make sense? Like in regards to art, and I'm not saying the right word, but let's embrace people at all levels of their journey in art, music, wine, and all of that. How about that?
I think it's the way it should be, because when you have a garden and you have these sculptures and you can touch them, and it's more than just looking with your eyes, but you can interact with them, which I think takes the art a step beyond. For example, if you go to a museum or a gallery, a lot of times you're not allowed to go up and touch a painting or even touch a sculpture. There's probably certain areas in certain museums that allow for that kind of experience, that sensory experience, but mostly you really are looking with your eyes. Here you really, can really embrace, I think, the pieces at whatever level you're coming in at. And this garden, which is located outside of Santa Fe, is also the home of Kevin Box's the Box Studio, which is where he and his wife Jennifer do a lot of the collaborating there. And he has exhibitions that go to actual gardens themselves. So even though you can go and see this Origami in the Garden. You can see these sculptures in Santa Fe. There are also exhibitions that are around the United States, and currently there's one at Lou Gardens in Orlando, and another one at Tulsa Botanic Garden. Both are going into dates into September. So, you can see his work within a garden setting, which even takes it like to another step, So it's kind of a cool concept. But when you go inside the Origami in the Gardens, the one in Santa Fe, you're going to see some of these sculptures, you have to understand, are these jaw-dropping, ginormous pieces that are in this high desert 12-acre landscape. And you can stroll around and look to your heart's content. And, there's a little plaques that explain what the piece is. And, there's everything from these painted ponies that are galloping across the field. There's a winged horse. There's bouquets of flowers in all stages of development. There's cute bunnies. There's so many different pieces. And it's just, I found it very joyous to walk around there. It really was.
And the setting with the rocks and
yes,
like, the dirt, like you're in the West and this beauty is there which has this balance of sharp edges and roundness to it, with his
exactly.
art. Exactly. It really is awesome.
And it's just so colorful, I love this one that Jennifer created. It's called Carried Away, and it's a woman's dress. And, the white dress has these cutouts, and there are these butterflies that have been released from the dress to help lift this woman up and carry her away. And it's such a cool piece. And you go behind the piece and you see the inside of the dress, which has been left in its bronze state. So the plaque says that it allows us to glimpse her inner beauty as well as the exterior. So it's, some of the pieces just have such wonderful interpretations.
I love it. I love it. So they have their own garden that people can go to, right? And it's by donation only. But this is through May through September, right? Where you can go south of Santa Fe, but his work is like traveling the country, right? Right now it's in, the K Contemporary Art Gallery, right? That people can go to, but it travels the country.
Yeah, the K Contemporary always has Kevin Box's work on display, both outside, and they have a wonderful sculpture garden in the back of the gallery as well as inside the gallery. So you can always see his work in Santa Fe, and then you can go south of Santa Fe, like you said, and see it in the Origami in the Garden. But like I mentioned previously, he does have these exhibitions that will be at different gardens, and so the two that I mentioned before in Oklahoma and in Florida are happening right now. So if you're anywhere near those two states or those two destinations and you really would love to see his work within that kind of garden setting, I highly, highly suggest and recommend that you visit.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone, if you go to origamiinthegarden.com, that will tell you where he is, really. And it's so beautiful. I love what he's done. And I want to go. I want to go. I want to go. It's good. And that season is when people are on doing their road trips. So this is one of those roadside attractions that is super cool. So check that out. Again, also the link to Debbie's article where you can see the actual art and the images and, all of that. That is in the episode notes. So thank you so much, Debbie. It's always good, Fire Monkey, I should say, to have you back on the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and talk soon.
Happy spring.
You too. Bye-bye.
So, we're having a garden party, and I love the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. We do so many different shows with them. We have 3 every month, every second Tuesday, every second Friday, every third Monday. And we're so excited because we've opened it up, to more members of IFTWA, as we say, to join us on the show. You can go to ifwtwa.org. We have Heidi Sander joining us from Ontario, Canada. And she is joining us on our garden party because she's a poet. She is an award-winning poet, a Pushcart Prize nominee, a best-selling author, and of course, she travels the world and is a travel journalist. So you can go to her website, go to HeidiSander.com. So welcome, Heidi. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well.
Yeah. How long have you been part of the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association? I can say IFTWA now. I said it twice now. How long have you been members of that?
I'm actually a new member with them, but I've been travel writing for decades.
Oh, wonderful. And were you always a poet as well?
I've always written poetry, but it wasn't until about 5 years ago that I started taking it really seriously and, pulled the poems out of my drawers and started submitting to contests, and then I won an international poetry prize, and all of a sudden I have all of these poetry books published. So it's been a nice passion of mine, along with travel writing.
Well, I have to say April, we're having our garden party in April, but I believe April is poetry month too.
April is poetry month. At least it is in Canada. I believe
it is in America. I just looked it up. As you're here, I'm like, isn't it poetry month? So we're getting like two parties going on. It's gardening month, garden month. Yeah, we're rocking it.
A poetry garden party.
Sounds good to me. So I'm asking people about where they want to spend like a garden party, and you've got a beautiful one in your backyard, and it's part of your first book, right? That you have out now, and everyone, wait, I also want to go, I've got so much to ask you here a little bit, but tell everybody about your book, because this is all done through Blue Moon Publishers, right? And it is about Stratford. So Stratford is in Ontario. Or am I getting it all twirled around? I haven't been there
you're
yet.
right. Stratford is in Ontario. It's about a bit over an hour outside of Toronto. So that's kind of gives you a location point. And it's a very theatrical, creative, artistic town, and that's why I love living here. And so I've written a series of books called Stratford Gems, and it's like my love song to Stratford. So I just write poems inspired by different places in Stratford, and I'm working on book 3 now.
Oh, so it's a series. Okay, so and then you've got photos that go with it. It's beautiful, and the other part of that is what you do. I wanted to get into, so we'll get to the book even more, but I was reading that you also have your poems up on walls, so it's like an art piece. Of course, poetry is art, and I love that you do it because I think sometimes I feel like we've lost the world of poetry, the art of it, as something, it's as important as music and novels, and sometimes I feel like we need to do an extra push for poetry.
No, I agree, and I've actually been combining my poetry with travel, and so I call the Stratford Gems series a poetic travel guide, really, because I include my photography, so I'm also a travel photographer. So I have my photographs along with the poem, and then at the end I have just a little write-up about the place that inspired it, so my kind of little travel blurb about that, along with the directions and how to get there. So I do feel that poetry is a really good entry point to the intersection of the arts. So I've collaborated with musicians and visual artists and filmmakers, dancers. So I really feel that if I can collaborate with all of these artists, I want to do the same in the travel world. So that's why I started the Poetic Travel Guide. I'm not sure if that's a new genre I created, but it exists now.
I love it. I love it. And I want to hear about you. I know you're the founder of Canada is Our Poem. So can you tell us about that?
Yes. So I launched Canada is Our Poem earlier this month. We're going through a lot of pivotal times here in Canada, and, a lot of the world is too. So I just wanted to give Canadians a chance to express their thoughts and just hear from voices from coast to coast. And it's partly to just promote solidarity within our own country as well. So it's a poetry contest, and there will be a winner for a $1,000 prize, and then also 200 of the poems will be published in an anthology.
Ooh.
So it's just a great way to hear a lot of different voices from Canada, and I've made a lot of partnerships and connections across the country. So poems are coming in from all of the provinces, which is really great to see.
Oh, this is exciting. And so Pathways to Poetry, that's connected with this?
Pathways to Poetry is connected with everything. That's an online multimedia course that I created for poetry. So for beginning and emerging poets. And it's a 12-week program, and there's a community built around that as well. So, obviously anyone who's taken my Pathways to Poetry course, they probably will enter the contest if they're Canadians. But I also have students in the course that are from the U.S., from Europe, so it's quite a nice group.
Wow. Is there anything you don't do? I mean,
a lot of things.
Yeah, I know. I'm just you're really involved. This is fantastic. This is really cool what you do. And so everyone can go to HeidiSander.com to learn everything. The writing workshops are on there. You also write fiction, right? So
I do, but I'm really focusing on poetry now. Like I said, it's just this great entry point to collaborate, and I'm a big collaborator, so I'm just finding so much synergy and creative energy around the poetry, so I'm putting a lot of my focus into that.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
And taking it and traveling with it, right? Like even with Canada's Our Poem, it's going to go across the country. So once the contest wraps up, then I want to do a celebration across the country and have open mics nights for poetry.
Nice.
So there's a lot that will be happening.
Do you do poetry slams?
I do, actually. There's Canada's Our Poem is going to be featured at some of the poetry slams across Canada as well. So yeah,
cool.
But I do a lot of poetry performances too. So I've done like theatrical performances and with dancers, and I dance too. So
nice.
I have done So I just love performing poetry and connecting with audiences. But the open mic nights are some of the greatest ones because it's just this platform where everyone can share their thoughts, and it's a very warm, welcoming environment, and it's just a wonderful way to connect through poetry.
Yeah, I used to host slams. Way back when. Yeah.
Oh, we have to have a talk sometime.
Yeah, years ago. Yeah, that was in San Diego when we first started our magazine back in the late 90s. Early 2000s, we did poetry and also hosted, we're musicians, but so did that too. And, so it was just very connected to me, songwriting and poetry. Sometimes I'm like, is this a poem or a song? Like, which way does it want to go? And then I have to talk to it. And sometimes it says, just put me away and bring me out later.
It's so interesting, but I mean, songwriting and poetry are so connected. Sometimes I will hear a poem, like I will hear the melody. I took up to grade 3 piano, so I'm not, a really, really talented musician that way where I can pull the notes out of air, but sometimes I will just sing the words into my memo pad, and then a musician can listen to that and create the music that I kind of dreamed up. But that whole songwriting is such an interesting process. Have you ever collaborated with a songwriter?
Oh, yeah. Tons.
I love that.
No, I've worked with bands and all kinds. Yeah. A lot of. Yeah. It's.
Hey, I want to interview you sometime on Pathways to Poetry. I interview a lot of poets because they're really interested, to hear kind of the different pathways that people take with poetry. So that's exciting.
It is. It's fun, but now it's kind of like we're in a different world as magazine and travel, but it actually goes together. As a travel writer, don't you also kind of like poetry makes you get to the point where it also allows you to have some flowers, going in the garden theme. So you get to have this beauty or harshness, depending on what the poem is about, right? But you can't be boring. Same thing as travel writing, right?
It's true, and there in poetry, there's such a strong use of imagery and metaphors, and that really connects well to the travel writing. And see, I really feel there is more a stronger connection between poetry and travel writing that people may not even be aware of. So we're
No,
unearthing that today, which is interesting.
creative nonfiction, man, it's all connected. It is.
It is. It truly
So
is.
I want to get to the Stratford Festival, right? So
Yes.
this is happening in gardens, right? This festival. So it's like Stratford, we all think Shakespeare immediately. As soon as I saw Stratford, I'm like, she's got Shakespeare going on. So I mean, that's kind of interesting, right? Is a town or city named after Stratford upon Avon for Shakespeare?
It is, and it's one of the most renowned theaters in North America for Shakespearean plays, but they also commission, contemporary plays, so they have a blend of the two. And when it started in the 1950s, it actually was just an outdoor tent. So now there are four theaters now throughout Stratford that host the various plays each year. And there are gardens associated with a lot of those festivals, but the main festival theater, the first one that was built, has a lot of gardens. So you can't even get to the festival without walking through a garden, which is beautiful. I refer to the gardens as the actors that you meet along the way. Gardens often are overlooked, but literally before you step into play, you're passing by these garden actors, and every day they're opening up to the sun, raising their faces to, whatever comes their way, bees, gardeners, theater goers, and they do set the stage for your entry into the theater.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's not a carnivorous plant exhibit that you're doing first, which I love though, by the way. As soon as you were talking about the little faces, because to me, plants are faces. And so like picture plants and things like that, I'm like, all right, what's going on there? I talk to plants. I'm weird.
Oh, I love plants and trees. And in the festival theater, they have more than 2,500 plants. Like the variety of flowers that you see is just unbelievable. And then they have a garden bed as well. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a garden bed, but it dates back to the Victorian era, but it's basically low-growing plants that are, they kind of incorporate a symbol, and the design changes every year because they incorporate the symbol referring to plays in that season's schedule. So it becomes like a puzzle. When you see it within the first month or two, you're trying to figure out which icon refers to which play, and then as the garden starts growing, you can actually see the symbols very clearly. So it's an interesting garden to return to.
Oh, so you watch that. Well, there's a garden in Asheville, North Carolina. It's at the Arboretum, and they have a quilt garden. So you can watch them actually plant. We were there when they were doing the new planting, and it's a quilt. They plant the plants according to a quilt design. So it's like a bedspread.
Oh, interesting.
And so where you can stand right there, or the best thing is you go up on this little bridge area and you look down, and it's like a quilt bed, and it's flowers and plants, foliage and all of it. It's pretty cool,
that is
man.
So special.
And they have different art. It's awesome.
It is, and those ones are often the hardest to plant. Like the designing starts months in advance. And it's complicated, right? Because I know this just from talking to the gardeners regarding the garden bed here, or the carpet bed. If you don't have enough plants in there, they're not going to fill in the space. And if it's a bad season, you're constantly replacing the plants. So it's
exactly
a complicated one.
Wow. Okay, so I want to hear your poem. I know our audience does, called "Curtain of Light," and this is an homage to the Stratford Festival Gardens, right?
It is. Yes, I wrote it. I basically wrote it kind of as a tribute to the gardens, because they're, like I said, it's the changing play without the fanfare or curtain or any boughs, but they really are the backdrop, and they just offer a stage of light and color from spring to autumn. They're always changing. Like every few days when I go there, there's always a different plant coming up. I spent 1 year where I was photographing the garden, so I was there almost every day and
nice.
got to know all the plants intimately. So yes, Curtain of Light. They plant flowers for the spotlight. Imagine them as if each were a line delivered on a stage, a sentence repeated decades later over wine, coffee, in airports, hushed rooms. Meanwhile, rosemary, wintergreen, thyme are words each gardener knows, plants they can wrap their tongues around. While on stage, their lips repeat, forsooth, methinks, milady, as if from one world to another. The stage to garden is merely a step across the threshold of discovery. Greeted at the door of imagination once again.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. It is really beautiful. Everyone, HeidiSander.com. You got to go there. Heidi, thank you for sharing your poetry and telling us about these beautiful gardens and the theater scene and telling us a little bit more about you here on Big Blend Radio. Everyone, again, HeidiSander.com. And is going to your website the best place to go get Stratford Gems, your book series?
Certainly, or at the Blue Moon Publishers website. The theater bookstore also carries it. So if you're in town, you can go there.
So everyone,
as well.
BlueMoonPublishers.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Take care.
So as part of our garden party celebrating Gardening Month and Garden Month, anything to do with flower power, quite frankly, we have got a special guest joining us, and it's another special guest from Johnny Schaefer here. He's here every first Sunday on our Big Blend Radio's Big Daily Blend show that celebrates all holidays and observances. And I believe, Johnny, you went to school with Kimmy Iniegas. Did I say your name right, Kimmy? Did I get it?
You got pretty close.
I was close, and then I chickened out.
Well, it's one of those tricky Basque names that the spelling got changed at the border, but it's pronounced Iniegas. So, okay. And I'm up in Idaho where there's a lot of Basque people, so they all get it.
Oh, there you go. Well, I think the first time I saw a Basque restaurant was Yuma, Arizona, and then in Bakersfield.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that's close.
The one in Bakersfield was great.
You both you went there because everyone, Johnny, if you haven't heard before on the shows, Johnny's from Porterville, California, which is up near Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks, and has an amazing high school band they're world renowned for. It's a wonderful destination. And so Johnny, did you go to school with Kimmy? How did you guys connect?
Yes, we went to school together, and we've remained friends. We kind of got reconnected through Facebook, like a lot of people. I mean, I think both of us have really reconnected with a lot of people from Wenatchee High School, which is where we went. And Kimmy, in reconnecting, I discovered that she had gone into floral design, and I thought it was such a great, fit for our topic this month. And so
I agree.
Thought we had to have her on and hear some of her stories.
Well, Kimmy, I was going to ask, with Porterville being known for citrus and then all the orchards, the pistachio, almonds, all those beautiful orchards and so much produce being grown in Tulare County in the Central Valley of California. And then even like if you look at Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park, Sequoia National Forest, that area is so gorgeous. Did those flowers influence you to go towards the floral work, or is it your family, or both? Because it's such a beautiful area where you went to school.
Yeah, and I do want to start with, I was thinking about this today. I think I actually have known Johnny since I was 9 years old.
Wow.
I can't remember if it was some sort of summer program, so I don't remember if it was drama or if it was just summer school.
Oh, yeah.
We shared a bus, but that's when I first met Johnny, and he was super friendly, and I was probably a little bit too shy and probably came off as a bit of a snob, but I just did. Johnny's very, very outgoing. He has never met
The
a
Snow
stranger.
Queen? Are you talking about this? Was that the Snow Queen?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. That's
yes.
what it was. Yeah. Okay. That's
Yeah, Porterville College. Yeah, it was a summer drama program. Terry Sinyard, who was the drama teacher at the junior high school there, he ran a summer drama program, and we put on the Snow Queen, and I was the Hobgoblin.
Oh, wow. Here we're getting we're getting all the good gossip of Porterville. Now, Porterville has that historic theater, the Barn Theater.
Yes, it's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
It's continuing running community theater in the country. Yeah.
Yeah. And didn't they have like some festival with vultures there or something? I know this has nothing to do with gardens, but so what? But didn't they had something, or they were going to do something with vultures. I don't know. Maybe it was.
I don't know, but I lived above the Barn Theater for a while, and in the afternoons, the vultures would catch the updraft coming up the hill, and there would be dozens of them about 4:00 in the afternoon in the summer times, and they would just soar upwards and just ride the wind like a kite, and it was absolutely stunning. Yeah, it was. It's quite something to see them, because they are enormous. You really, until you see them pretty close up, it's hard to fathom that wingspan, but they're just absolutely, they're bigger than I am. I mean, they're
actually, condors came out your way too.
Yeah.
Pinnacles National Park, near Hollister and San Benito County, and also near Gilroy, that region, they do the condor program where they're releasing them back into the wild, and they started going over to Sequoia and Kings Canyon, and even up in Tehachapi area, which is a little south of Porterville. So I think people got to see them up in the Porterville region. I mean, why not? You've got giant sequoia trees, might as well add in some big birds in there. You got big trees, and big flowers. So, this is so cool. But yeah, Kimmy, what was your start into becoming a floral designer?
Well, it actually started before I was born. So, my dad managed Smith's Flower Shop inside of Smith's grocery store in Porterville for Howard Smith, starting in 1957. And then I came along a few years later, and right around the time that I came along, my dad bought the flower shop from Howard, and I grew up in the back room of the shop. And so I do recall, as a toddler, taking naps, just curling up in the shelves underneath the work tables in the back room. So I come by this very honestly.
Yeah, really. Wow.
And then after I moved to Boise, as an adult, I was away from the business for a while. And when I decided I wanted to go back in, because I was raising a family and working and, staying at home. And I thought, okay, well, I need to work my way back in. So I decided to go back as a designer. And the distinction is you can be a florist and not be a designer. And I usually say florists make money. And designers are, I guess florists are more like the musicians and designers are more like the composers. And so I studied very hard, and I got into the American Institute of Floral Designers, which is the premier design organization for floral designers. So it would be the floral equivalent if you're like an interior designer, ASID, or one of those other professional organizations. And so really then the focus is more on artistry. And so I kind of am the person that's sort of in Bridget. I'm kind of in the middle.
And so you're still doing it as a freelance, but kind of on a small basis. You're pretty much retired out of it, but still, if someone said, I really need help with my wedding, or I'm
No,
having
I'm
a
not
garden
doing.
party. How about
Yeah,
that?
no, I work for others, so I will freelance for others, but I got out of the business part of it because that requires all the businessy stuff. You have to maintain
Yeah.
records and you have to do the tax stuff and you have to do, and I'd rather just design. So when, I've done a lot of work in like Jackson Hole, Wyoming, I've done stuff in Seattle, I've done stuff down in California, and, so if somebody's having like a really big event and the floral designer that books the event doesn't have enough people, they'll fly me in. And so I get to swoop in, have all the fun, and then swoop out.
Okay, that makes sense. That's good for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
That's
it's
super
really good.
cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everyone, you can find Kimmy on LinkedIn, and I'll try and get the link to that. But I think they just have to search by your name for it to come up properly. But so she's based out of Boise, Idaho. So yeah, right now it's spring. There's everything's in bloom everywhere, and it's just going to get bigger and better, right? Are there certain flowers with certain meanings, or like are there, if we said, hey, we're going to have a garden party, right? And then we're going to have flowers on the table, even though we're going to be surrounded by flowers, right? But do you do specific kind of flowers for that kind of event versus like could you use chamomile in like a garden party and then in a funeral kind of thing? Or are there specific flowers for specific things?
Well, yeah, that's a really good question because it's very personal to people. And I know that growing up in my generation, there was this whole thing around like lilies were for funerals and carnations were for funerals, and carnations were considered of kind of a vulgar flower, and chrysanthemums are like an old lady flower. But what I love is there's a whole generation of young people that are discovering flowers, and they don't have a preconceived idea of what the flowers stand for. They just appreciate them for what they are and how they look. And it's so nice to see them seeing flowers with fresh eyes, because they look at chrysanthemums and go, wow, those are just stunning, because there's so many varieties and there's so many different, they come in big sizes, and they look at carnations, they go, oh my gosh, they smell amazing and they last forever. And and of course roses are perpetual favorite. And there is a lot of meaning imbued with those. I think most people, when they think of the meaning of flowers or the meaning of the colors of flowers, kind of go back to the Victorian significance. So like red roses, of course, for true love, romantic love, orange roses for passion.
Naughty.
Yeah.
Yeah. See,
Yeah.
I went there.
You knew that you went there.
And it's like you're in the naughty stage because you're not quite like fully committed yet. But it's like we want to get busy, roses.
That's what. That's just
boy.
White, of course, for purity, and
so you can't put white roses and orange roses in the same vase, or could you? Like it's, you know what I mean? Would that be a no-no to somebody if they didn't know? Like to me, it would be because I would go by color and wouldn't really go by that, but then it's kind of interesting,
Yeah. And again, that's when it becomes personal, because for some people, there's so much meaning vested in each flower or each color of flower. And for others, it's just purely aesthetic. And they say, oh, okay, this is, like you said, you look at something like that and you go, wow, that's a really sharp contrast. It's bright, it's juicy, and it kind of vibrates visually. And so if that's what appeals to you, go for it. That's absolutely what you should do. So, personally, my favorite flowers in terms of color are green. I just love green flowers. So.
Oh, yes. I've seen green roses from China.
Yes. Yeah. There's green roses. There's, of course, green chrysanthemums, green carnations, green, let's see what else.
Hellebore has green.
The hellebore green. There's a diameter.
Orchids, right?
orchids, lots of green orchids. And so, and just getting all that texture in there is really exciting. I love I love all that. Green gladiolas.
Yeah. See, we're really in that time where you give people flowers. Like, we used to live up in the mountains in San Diego in Julian, and it was known for lilacs blooming. I know, Johnny, you went through that with me last year, but I still can't, it's a sense memory of opening the window and knowing spring is here. It was like you could still have daffodils blooming because they have over 1 million planted in this little mountain down in Julian. It's probably 2 million by now. Yeah. And then, they have apple orchards all in bloom and everything. But when the lilacs hit, it is just like this. You guys know that in Porterville, when all the oranges, which I think are in bloom now.
Yes.
When that scent of orange orchards are when it's in full bloom, it's intoxicating. And so when those kind of memories to me, I wouldn't be opposed to have orange blossoms in a flower bouquet or something, because that's something that would remind me of somewhere. You know what I mean? I like it by place. It's kind of.
And I think with fragrance, memory is so intense. I mean, music, Johnny knows this. It's like you hear a song that just transports you back to a different era, right? But I think the same thing, there's so many core memories that are associated with the fragrance of flowers. And when you say orange blossoms, I am right back there. I was in California, I was in Porterville last week, and you couldn't quite get the smell yet. It wasn't quite there, but you knew it was coming. So, you
keep sticking your nose out the car window.
Yeah.
It's like, please, let's have this. We want this. But that's such a huge thing when you think about these memories, but then also flowers being used for a celebration of life and some very serious things in hospitals and how they cheer people up. There's nothing like flowers to. We travel full time and pet sit, and often, replenish people's flowers when they get home, or have some, even a potted plant. And I've even seen some designs with potted plants.
Yeah.
There's,
absolutely.
Yeah. Someone can have something that stays,
Yeah. Absolutely. And when you mentioned a hospital, I told Johnny this story. This is very personal to me because I had a dear friend, a mutual friend for Johnny and me, Eric. His mom was in the hospital in Santa Barbara, and I called over there and just said, she's going into surgery. Can you hurry up and get something over to her? And doesn't have to be anything huge, just something nice. And so the florist there sent over a very small African violet, but they did it up so beautifully. I mean, it was so thoughtful. They put moss in the basket, and they added some twigs and branches, and a little bit of ribbon, and they put a little bird on it, and it was absolutely precious. And so she wrote me. She didn't have any stationery in the hospital, so she just took the card that I had sent her, the enclosure card, and she had written a thank you on the back. She was describing everything that was on it, and just it really made such a difference to her, because in a sterile hospital room, having something that is living, that has color and texture, and it can transport you, even a little 4-inch plant. And they were the last flowers that she ever received. She died on the hospital table, but it was, for her, it was a moment that lifted her. And it was something that it was a final memory for her to take. And it was also, because it was a token of love for me, she had that. And so I just encourage people, it doesn't matter. You don't have to spend $1 million or, $1,000 or $100. You can just, even something small can be so meaningful. And, if you give it with love, and so I just, it's
your messengers of hope and love, I think. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Johnny.
Well, yeah, sometimes even one flower can have a huge impact, if it's carefully selected, and it's something that, you pick out that one special flower, and it can really, it can say as much as a bouquet sometimes, I think.
I think so too. I absolutely. Not that I want to discourage anyone from doing big bouquets.
Oh, of course. Oh, no, of course. I didn't mean that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, but it is something, depending, even how it's wrapped,
Yeah.
does it have a ribbon around it and things like that?
Yeah.
When the shooting happened in Uvalde, near Austin, Texas, the school shootings, I remember hearing the story of all these florists because it's a small area. They ran out of flowers. I mean, this is a horrible situation.
Yeah.
But all these florists pitched together with flowers and just manpower, to give these flowers to the families and to the resting places for all the victims who had passed, and for them, it just was these stories from the florists. Like, it was like this underground network of, flower power people that healed so many. Kimmy, does that happen a lot?
It does. And after there's, Uvalde was just so singularly heart-wrenching. And so the way that people like me, designers, can express themselves is with flowers. And so there was immediately an outpouring, and I was online and on Facebook. There's a lot of, I belong to a bunch of groups that of florists and designers, and immediately people were reaching out to say, is there something I can do to help? Even before the florists were saying, hey, we need help. And so, but there's a lot of professional organizations, but also personal connections amongst florists. We're one of those. What I love about this being a floral designer is that our business correspondence often signs off with love. Instead of cordially or sincerely or whatever.
Yeah, the sincerely sucks.
Well,
it's so cold.
We sign off with with love, because
these
are very emotional people. And but yeah, when there's a flood, when there's a hurricane, when there's a tornado that wipes out a business, because these are by and large independent small businesses, and you really have to work so hard to survive, because this is perishable. It's not like I don't want to minimize what restaurateurs, people who own restaurants, go through, but we can't cook and freeze our food and reheat them in our flowers and reheat them in the microwave and eat them later. It's like when they're gone, they're gone. And so the margins can be kind of tight, and the overhead can be pretty high. And so it's just one of those things where people reach out to each other and are very supportive, which is just a very lovely thing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, now let's talk about garden parties, because that's what we're having.
Okay.
So I want to know, and I'm going to ask you this, Johnny, and all our guests are getting it too, right? We've got to do this. If you're going to have a garden party anywhere, Kimmy, where would you have it? And what flowers are you putting on your table?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So this is hard for me, because trying to narrow down, because there's just so many possibilities. They're endless. And I always try and think of it as a designer, I try and get into the mind of the person who's actually throwing the party, and then what the occasion is and where the location is. And so, and I know some really good designers are like that. So for instance, I happened to be working in Jackson Hole, Wyoming one time, and there was going to be, I believe it was a birthday party for a lady, and it was going to be outside. And of course, the gorgeous, gorgeous mountains in the background, and the Grand Tetons, and it was stunning. And they had tents and open-sided tents. And so in that case, my good friend Ian Whipple, who owns a floral business, he just recently sold it there, went in, and he had like these large, huge stands that were birch, the white birch, big giant white birch stand. And then pillars, and then on top of those, like these enormous arrangements that mirrored the sort of the autumn colors that were in nature. So in the fields, things were turning yellow and golden and stuff. So he had like giant sunflowers and all of these orange flowers, and so it really felt of the place. There was a wedding that I worked on here, that was up in the mountains, in the springtime. And so they wanted it to feel like field flowers. And so, the centerpieces that I did, had like these spiky, beautiful flowers in them that picked up like the blues, and the children in the family picked out the colors. So there was like blues and lavenders and like some pink and some white and a little bit of yellow. And each of the kids picked out the flower that they wanted, that they liked. And so we had to, incorporated that in there. And, when I tested to get into AIFD, and we were just told, this is a garden party, make a centerpiece. And a lot of people were going for kind of like an English garden look, which of course is stunning. I love that one, a French garden look, which I absolutely love. But we had they had given us these amazing tropical flowers. And so, I took the tropical flowers, and I took some bamboo, and I made like a tall, kind of like almost a teepee structure. And I had orchids springing off of that, and dangling down, orchid heads. And they gave us
so we're going to have a tiki party, garden party.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I hollowed out the pods for water and stuck the orchids in there, and then and they were springing out and dangling down, and then had some of the other tropicals in there, the anthuriums, and so it's really. It comes down to like, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you love?
Well, by the way, anthuriums in our book are called naughty boy plants, naughty boy plants.
We called them
Sorry,
flowers because they had. Yeah,
we had to do that. Sorry, I actually went to one of the largest growers of it in Miami a few years back. And they also do all the orchids for indoors. And when you see these growing facilities, man, it's pretty epic. It's crazy cool. But I grew up in Kenya, where
coming out of Florida is amazing. Yeah,
they're doing a lot. They're doing a lot. But growing up in Kenya, we had flowers that were like Rwanda and Kenya did a lot that go to the flower markets and stuff like that internationally. And that was. It just depends on what was happening.
Yeah. I think for the United States, the vast majority of flowers are coming out of South America, but I specialized in local floral and California floral. And part of that was just logistics and growing up in California. Of course, there were all those amazing farms along the California coast, the Central California coast, down in Southern California and up in Watsonville. And a lot of those are gone now. Like there's no more commercial domestic carnation growers. All the carnations are coming, commercial carnations are coming pretty much out of South America. And it's very intense cultivation, very, very hands-on. You have to be out there all the time nurturing them. So when you see a locally grown carnation now, it's going to be more like a field flower. They're going to be a lot smaller. They're going to, but I really, especially during COVID, when the flower farmers were struggling because when COVID hit and all the weddings canceled, suddenly that was the money they were banking on in the summertime. And so I was very fortunate because I had a boutique inside of a grocery store at the time. And it was a small grocer. It was, and so I was able to continue to do flowers, and I kind of debated it, and I thought, this is a time when people, especially elderly people, are isolated, and so, there just was, and they weren't going out, they weren't socializing, and so I thought it was important to have flowers there. And I was so fortunate that the farmers were generous and they sent me lots and lots of flowers, fresh flowers. And it was one of those things that I think it helped me get through COVID.
Sure.
And I think that it helped a lot of people who just needed that little bit of a boost. And the grocery stores like Albertsons and some of the other stores, they were cutting back on their florals in their floral department because so many people were buying, were cooking from home that the trucks were full of produce and they didn't have room for flowers. And so I was fortunate to be able to FedEx them in from the farms and
that's cool.
Yeah. So
we all need it. And there was a death toll, so I think it was an important time. But all right, real quick though, what flowers are you going to have at your garden party?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if it's a spring garden party, I love moss. I love, in the springtime, of course, hyacinths and tulips and then if it's a little bit later in the season, iris. But I also like to incorporate things like strawberries and little strawberry plants and, and things, grasses. I love grasses, and all the daffodils, of course. You have to have daffodils. And then I like to incorporate stuff like nests and maybe like little robin eggs or
so nature
branches. And personally, that is, and this is very funny. I live in a very small house, and my mom, who is in her 90s, is cleaning out hers. And I'm not sure why, because she has a sister who's over 100 who's just doing smashingly well. So I think mom's getting rid of things a little too soon. But she sent me home one time with China service for 12, including everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am going to have, when the weather kind of is more predictable than it is right now, a giant picnic so I can actually use all of this gorgeous china.
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful.
So
Seeing that outside.
Yeah, we're going to have blankets on the grass, and I'm going to use my mom's fancy china.
I love it. I love that.
Nice.
Yeah.
That is nice. I like that. Johnny, what are you doing for your garden party? What flowers?
Well, my favorite flowers are Gerber daisies.
Yes.
I like the look of them, and I really like bold colors. So I like all the different colors that Gerber daisies come in, and they just make me happy. I don't know. So that would be my choice.
That's what grew in Kenya, was Gerber daisies. In South Africa.
Oh, yeah.
South Africa is massive for that.
Yes.
What we had is proteas. I'm going with proteas. That is, they grew wild in South Africa, and it was just, and then everyone's flower is the country's flower, the national flower, and our national flower is the rose. So I don't know if it's orange, but it was all from the story of the peace rose with our unity with France. And that's a whole other story for a different day. But anyway, so and it was all about peace, everybody. Just going to say that again. But I think, flowers remind us, and, when you have a symbol that is peace and it unites countries together, especially during war times, which is what the peace rose was about. I don't remember if it was World War I or II. I cannot I've got to look that up to get it straight, but it was one of those. And it was signaling the end of the war, and the peace rose was part of that. And so I think that's an important symbol for all of us when we have a garden party, to look at tea roses. They're so beautiful. The peace rose is a tea rose. Oh, they are so beautiful. And maybe we should, have a lot more of them at our gatherings this year and have a little bit more peace. So, and the peace lilies and all peace lilies, and, lilies are good too. But thank you, Kimmy, for joining us and giving us the inside scoop on what goes on with florists,
Yes, no, thank you so much. And I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about something I'm so passionate about. I did want to toss in there really quickly. I sent you a couple of photos, but funeral flowers, I gave you some descriptions on some of the pieces that I'd done, but it's really a great opportunity to honor someone for how they lived their lives, for what their passions were, incorporating that into the memorials at the service. And flowers are one way to do that.
I actually sang at a funeral recently where the family members each did a floral, like one of those floral displays for their father or the husband that represented their relationship. And he was a big Dodger fan, and he took the son to Dodger games. So the son had a floral baseball with Dodgers written on it.
I love it.
And then the other son always liked to go out to pizza with his dad, so he had flowers that looked like a pizza. And then,
oh my gosh, that's awesome.
And then the wife liked actually to go golfing with him, and so hers was a golf tee with a golf ball on it. And let's see, there was also a teddy bear from the granddaughter, and looked like the teddy bear that he got her. And so it was kind of cool. Like the church had all these different, images that were significant to the people that, were in his life. So I thought that was great.
Wow. Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it when you can be kind of whimsical, and still the most important thing is that the thought goes directly to the person that you're honoring, and it garners comfort for the survivors, the people that they leave behind, but it also really honors the person that you're laying to rest.
Wow. Wow. I'm going to go back to the Peace Rose. So it was developed by French horticulturist Francis Miland. I do not speak French, so I'm really sorry for any butcherings there. He developed it between 1935 and 39, and it became a symbol of hope and peace after World War II, because during the war, his rose got, hurt. And so he sent cuttings to people in the United States and in parts of Europe, and it became our Peace Rose. And here in the U.S. on this month, April 29th, 1945. So think about that. We're 75 years plus. What? More than that, yeah.
That is
and it was
wonderful.
The day Berlin fell, which marked a turning point in the war. And then later that year, the Peace Roses were given to each delegation at the inaugural meeting of the United Nations in San Francisco, with a note expressing the hope that the rose would influence men's thoughts for everlasting world peace. So check that out. I like that. I think we all need Peace Roses.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so too. I think I'm going to have to get myself a Peace Rose. That sounds absolutely wonderful.
I love this. Thank you so much. And Johnny always brings such amazing guests. And obviously a lot was going on in the Central Valley, man. Johnny knows people out there, and a lot's been going on. You got the gossip. And speaking of roses, you're where the Rose Parade happens. So, you can't beat that. I think he's got the biggest garden party of all of the country right in his backyard.
That's true. That's true. That's true. I have a lot of friends that work on that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, thank you both so much. And again, you can keep up with Kimmy. You can find her on LinkedIn if you're up in her area of Boise. And her last name is spelled Ynigues. So just type in her name, Kimmy. It's Kimi, and then Ynigues. And we could talk about this for hours. So anyway, thank you so much, Kimmy. Thank you, Johnny, as always.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.